And Mustard Butters. Southern Miss to the doggone top, baby.
What's going on, everybody? Southern Miss fans, we back at it. CB Sports Show here with my man Richard Johnston of the 1958 National Championship team there at Southern Miss. Really honored to get this guy in the camper, man. Get him on here to pick his brain, and man, it's been an honor to get you on here. And even before we were doing this, I'm all about on these things. I might be recording and all that, but we're always keeping it like we just did, right? Okay. Off camera, right?
Right.
So he came bearing gifts, man. I got highlights of that national championship team. I got this is even really cool. A portrait. I'll share this on our page. Everybody can see it. It's probably not the best to see here of that national championship team. Just to run y'all down some of the scores that season. Louisiana Tech 0 to Southern Miss's or Mississippi Southern 14. Trinity University another 0. Southern Miss 15. Memphis State, the one we're going to talk about in a little bit, 22-24. Southern Miss had the win there. Or that's in Hattiesburg, I believe. Is that right? And also Southeastern only scored 6 points. West Texas State 0. Abilene Christian 0. North Carolina State. This one was in Mobile. They were able to get 14 on them. Virginia Tech 0. Chattanooga. And this was the national championship game. Only 13 points. Mr. Richard, man, let's talk about this season. Awesome season, 19-0, no ties, no losses. UPI National Championship football team. Kind of explain what that UPI was and why we was in this,
Yes, that year, at the beginning of the season, UPI, which is United Press International, decided they were going to create a college Division I, which had never been done before. You either was in the university in Division I, or you was in the college Division II. So that year they created a Division I college team. We started out at the beginning of the year. We were number 1. I'm not sure why. Only thing because they would have had to go by the year before, probably. But we had a good year in the '57 season. I think we wound up losing one game on the thing. So so that's how we stayed number 1 throughout the season, and the final game was what ultimately was the championship game, was Chattanooga, and Chattanooga was number 6, and they had beat University of Tennessee that year 14-7.
There you go. So, now, obviously, we're jumping right into the 58 season. But Mr. Richard, where'd you go to high school? Talk to us about high school and going on to the recruiting process.
We went to. I was born in New Orleans, and in 1945 we went to Biloxi. So I started. I went to junior high. That's when I started playing football, and all the way through junior high and high school, which was 7th grade through 12th grade. I was at Biloxi. And I was fortunate enough that I played all 4 sports. I led it in all 4. Fortunately, football was my specialty, and that's where I wanted to be. And we went both ways back then, center and linebacker. That's the positions that I played. In my senior year, I made all conference, which was all Big 8. And all state, and then I played in the high school all-star game on the South team, and we were the winning team. So that was it.
That's nice.
I was offered a number of scholarships from the Southeastern Conference teams, and then Tulane was a member of the Southeastern Conference back then, and because I was born in New Orleans, I guess I thought that's where I really wanted to go, and I went, and unfortunately it was a mistake. I tried to leave right off the bat, but I was not able to. So after the 6th week, I contacted Southern Miss to find Mississippi Southern. I'm sorry, that to see if I still had a scholarship, and they said yes. And I withdrew from school on Thursday, and that Friday I headed up to Southern. So the 7th week of the season, which would have been about the 3rd week in October, something like that, I enrolled in Southern. They were in the quarter system, and I was actually getting there for only half a quarter, which I was only able to take about 6 hours. But at least I enrolled in school and began. And of course, I joined the football team. Well, as a redshirt back then, you immediately was presented with a red jersey and called the red shirt team, and that was the team that the varsity scrimmaged against on offense and on defense, both ways. So you get real familiar with the talent that was there and how tough it was, and you also learn the coaches and such.
Yeah. Now, arriving, you choose Southern Miss. We're making that trip on Friday up there. You hit Hattiesburg. You're on campus. Where were you? Where you at? How you feel? How you feeling?
The first thing, well, I felt great, but the first thing was, and I didn't know him at the time, but my roommate was P.W. Underwood.
There you go.
And a guy by the name of L.T. Herman. L.T. was a senior and unfortunately wasn't playing anymore because he had been operated on. But P.W. was I guess he was playing like second string, maybe then 54.
Man, that's nice, man. Now, you got your roommate. You got to go meet Coach.
Yes. Yeah.
How was Coach Van?
Well,
upon your first.
Coach was the same the first time, the 10th time, the 100th time. Okay, on the thing, he was a very, very strict person. He was very well respected. He believed in two things in football. He believed that if you learned how to tackle and could tackle, and you learned how to block and could block, you could win football games. And that was his way. The 2-a-day practices that began every year on September 1st back then, all universities and colleges started football the same day for the year. They started September the 1st. No matter what time school starts. Sometimes school didn't start till 3 weeks later.
Okay.
But you were there for the September the 1st.
Right.
And everybody stayed in the old rock on the north end in the rooms there. And it was funny because they would have, I guess when I first went there in 54, since I was late, the cuts had already been made. And when I say cuts, I mean, I found out the second year, starting from scratch, that the cuts were people that left on their own because it was too tough. So that's how it went. The 2-day practices, they like today you have a limit on the NCAA allows so many hours on the thing, both for practice as well as physical practice, as well as what I call mental sessions, skull sessions we used to call them.
All the team meetings and stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so Coach Van would tell everybody the first thing they wanted to know, or it's quick. Nobody would go ask him individual, but they would kind of ask their assistant coaches, whoever. Oh, by the way, we only had 4 coaches. We had the head coach, which was Coach Van. The first year we had a line coach, which was mentally losing the line coach right now, but anyway, H.A. Smith, and then was the end coach, and Pete Taylor. No, Pete wasn't there. He didn't come the next. Roland Dale. Roland Dale was the line coach, and it's funny because Roland Dale had been coach at Gulfport High, which was the total enemy of Southern Mississippi. So I met him in the high school All-Star game. He was our line coach for the All-Star, and I really liked him. And it was real glad that he was at Southern when I came there. The second year, H.A. Smith left and Pete Taylor became the end coach at that time. And Clyde Hefford Stewart, was the backfield coach, and he was the brains behind everything. And also worked harder than anybody else because he looked at all the films and logged in the number of times they ran versus number of times they passed, and they gave us that information at the skull sessions. And back then, as a defense, the center called the defensive plays, which I was a center, so I called anytime I was in there. I called the defensive plays. The offense, the quarterback called the offensive plays, and that's what no plays came in from the sideline or we.
Yeah, and that's kind of neat to hear because, I mean, and today, even when I'm coming through, it's all run to the sideline, get the play, run back out, run to the sideline. And in a sense, it feels like coach is holding your hand throughout the game, you know. And you got a guy here that's telling you, man, during the week, was it Coach Rowland? Who was the coach breaking down film?
Hefford Stewart.
Coach
Clyde
Stewart
was one, but then he got with the assistant coaches. So when like our skull session that took place, the centers got together and went with the line coach.
Okay.
All right. And then after we had that meeting, we went together with the quarterbacks and the other, and then had a recap of offense and defense together. You know, everybody knew since we were playing offensive too. You know.
Right. And we got issues out today in football that some of the guys on the team don't know the plays. This guy was calling them. You know, they came up during the week with game plans, and it was kind of like some of them coaches that'll say, oh, well, you know, they're on their own now. This is what they're doing. It's like baseball, right? Baseball, you coach them all week. Well, during the game, baseball is baseball. You can't really do much. And that's kind of what it sounds like from just a sports guy sitting here, you know, that's how football was. And to me, it's a lot more between the ears back then than it is today because you didn't have coach holding your hand and, oh, well, tonight we're going to run this. No, this was an all-week thing, a legitimate game plan. Everyone had to know their part and do their part. We was also talking about some blitzes and stuff early. We'll get on that. But Coach Van, we've heard always defensive guru, defensive-minded. And I think a lot of that is you look down the scores and you see, you know, not a lot of people scored a lot on Southern Miss. Except for that Memphis State game, if you want to talk that.
We gave up 3 touchdowns in that game, and the primary reason we did is because our first-string quarterback, who was George Seafood, had broke his hand the week before. Our second-string quarterback, which was Ollie Yates, had broke his wrist the week before. So neither one of them dressed out. So we had a third-string quarterback who was Willie Jean Teeny, nicknamed Teeny Coates. And he played the entire game except for the fourth quarter. In the beginning of the fourth quarter, he got hit real hard in the head and had to go out of the game. And Billy Lawson, who was a sophomore then, came in and drove us down the field. And Hugh McInnes kicked the first field goal that Southern had kicked in about 10 years, I guess, something like that, and we won that game. But so not having the first-string quarterback and the second-string quarterback, we didn't do as much offensively as we were capable of and had, and we were fortunate to win that game by him kicking that field goal, especially with a fourth-string quarterback in to lead us down the field. So
yeah,
one other thing that's important since we Jeff and I talked about this, about different things before, but one unique thing back then was this. There was not one set of weights on the campus. Okay, not one set. you were forbid to work out with weights. You ran. That's what you did. That's how you kept in shape. That's how you played the game. And before practice, normally we'd have to run laps uh, around the stadium uh, on the thing, and then after practice was over with, you ran wind sprints, and usually they were 50 yards. Sometimes they decided they'd run you 100 yards. If they did that, they would only maybe run 3 or 4 at 100, and then it would go back to 50s. And usually by about the sixth time, the sixth dash for each, they had like centers and linebackers. We ran the same guards and tackles, ends, and they didn't have wide receivers. You was either a halfback, fullback, or an end,
right,
or a quarterback. And but anyway, usually about the seventh time, whoever won the race got to leave, and then one more, and whoever won that got to go in, and then the last one, everybody got to go in. So it usually averaged about 10 wind sprints a game. I remember, I think it was after, or not after, but before the juniors year, they decided they were going to weigh us before practice and after practice, okay? And that's 2-a-day practice I'm talking about. So I remember I weighed in at one weight, and when we came off the field at morning practice, I had lost 10 pounds. That afternoon, we weighed back in, and I was just about back because all the water I had drank. I was just about back to to the weight that I weighed in that morning. But in the afternoon, I lost 11 pounds. They did that for 3 days, and then they stopped. They never weighed us anymore that year or the next year. So I don't know what happened. They might have got scared with everybody.
That's probably what it was. Something going on.
Yeah. So anyway.
No, go ahead.
No, there's one other thing that passed on to Jeff that was unusual about this season, and that was the substitution rule. For some reason, I don't know how, but it was only that 1 year that it ever happened. They had limited substitution, but besides limited, they had the umpire kept tabs on 4 different sheets, and they had squares 1 through 100. So if you started the quarter, they didn't mark you down. But if you went in at any time, during the first quarter, they marked it down your number. If you went out, then you couldn't come back in until the next quarter, the second quarter. The same thing occurred if you went in then, it came out, didn't finish, and went back in, started the third quarter, you could do that. But that's why you didn't have specialists back then. You couldn't send in specialists to kick.
It wouldn't be worth it.
Because they might only get in once or twice, and they might be not able to go in when they need to kick or whatever. So you had no specialists on the thing. There wasn't any long snapper. There wasn't any punters, point after
kickers and all
kickers
that.
or field goals. So that's why.
Now, because of that, was there a lot of going for 2, or how was that?
That was another thing. That year, there was no going for 2. They didn't have that rule in. They had not put it in. That's why when we played the Chattanooga, the last game of the year, and we were ahead 20-13, and we fumbled with the goal and made the goal line stance, we wouldn't have lost the game. We would have tied the game. And of course, we held them on the goal line stance, so we won it and on the thing. We're the only team that has the untied, undefeated record. I believe it's a 41 team, 1941. They had undefeated, but they had 1 tie. So
yeah,
that's way.
Yeah, I'm like I say, guys. I'm sitting next to, captain of the undefeated team, 58, national champion center, 9-0 team, no losses, no ties, drafted by the Rams, 59 Senior Bowl, 78 gets in the Hall of Fame, the M Club, also selected for the team of the century of there in 2000. When you heard of the Hall of Fame, when you heard of the team of the century, how did you feel about this? Obviously, huge reward, getting a Hall of Fame, but my goodness, you get a call about team of the century, man. How's that?
Yeah, well, it was all. I was just it was untrue, really. I mean, of course, when you make the Hall of Fame deal, you join so many other great players. In fact, I was telling Jeff in '78 when I went in, Ray Guy was inducted. So I met Ray Guy then. We became close friends and stayed that way all through the rest of his career and life. And then you just can't imagine that how you feel when you find out you've been elected center on the Hall of Fame. Team of the century. It's how many good players. I've seen a lot of games over a lot of years, and I know how many good players they are, and how many been, and how many's gone to the pros and such on things. So it just you're very humble to realize and recognize that you've been selected for that.
Yeah, and it's pretty nice to when I was sitting here, we were talking before the show. Drafted by LA Rams. Something I wanted to kind of tell folks: he was drafted before the 58 season.
Right. Yeah, I was eligible because it was my fourth year in 57, and I was drafted by the Los Angeles Rams. And back then, you only had 14 teams in the NFL, period. So there was no such thing as a bonus. That was absolute. Not even the Heisman Trophy winner, if you will, got a bonus. They was pretty much standard contracts for different positions and such on the thing. So I was married and had two children when I played in the Senior Bowl. And Pete Rozelle, who later was the commissioner of NFL, and Sid Gilman was the head coach. And I met with both of them on a Saturday morning before the game. And I went into their hotel, and they handed me a contract, and it was $6,250 for the year. Well, I was married, had two children, and living in Biloxi, Mississippi, and there was no way that, of course, they would pay you way out to Los Angeles, but that's it. You had to pay your own room and board and anything else. And the best move I made was not going, because I've had both knees replaced and 3 back surgeries, so I didn't need any more beating up.
You got it. So, questions from some of the guys from you guys, some out in Texas, some Mississippi, some Georgia, some Florida. Basically, I did a collection of some of the questions, and I just kind of got some of the better ones. A lot of people wanted to know the same stuff. I'm gonna start with the number one question that almost everybody asked the same thing. And this is, I guess, a generic question. What was it like at that time in recruiting and caliber? Was there a gap with Southern Miss, Mississippi State, and Ole Miss? And how big, if there was a gap, how big of a gap? Because now it almost seems next to impossible. When we line up next to them, it's not. They can be beat Mississippi State. We got you this week. But just saying, when you look at them on paper, it does feel like, oh man, they got an SEC roster. Look at this roster. Look at all this. And then you got Southern Miss now, and there is a gap. But back then, what was it like? This gap that I speak of.
Well, there was. We recognized that you had teams in the Southeastern Conference that were supposed to be better than you, and we really, the 58 season, we were supposed to have a 10-game record, okay? 10-game season teams. And then Bear Bryant's first year at Alabama was 58. And when he came, he canceled our game that year, okay? So we didn't get to play Alabama. We played them in 57. They beat us. We played them in 56. We tied them. I played on all three of those teams. Well, two of them, 56 and 57. And so we didn't play. We hadn't played any other Southeastern Conference teams, but we had in 57. We beat Florida State in Mobile. 58, we played North Carolina State. We beat them in Mobile, and then we played Virginia Tech in Hattiesburg, and
y'all blew them out,
41-0. And we actually still hold. There's a couple records that we still hold by ourselves, and one of those is the Russian yardage that was compiled against Virginia Tech, and that was 502 yards, and we still hold the record for that. It's the most. We had undefeated, untied, the only undefeated, untied team. We actually, for a 9-game schedule, we only gave up 55 points, but for a 10-game, we're second because the 51 Mississippi Southern team only gave up 48 points, and we gave up 55. However, that Memphis game, I don't believe we would have gave up 22 points that they made if we'd have had at least the first two quarterbacks off one of the first two. And then also 2 of the touchdowns that was scored against us that year was we were caught penalized in the end zone for pass interference, and the team got the ball on the first and goal on the 1-yard line. So, and both of those scores. So but we did hold 5 schools scoreless,
Yeah. And we all know why Alabama and the Bear didn't want to play them, man. Come on now. We know why. He knew what was coming. I think this is just me talking. I think Bear knew what Southern Miss had that season. And now we all know, right? We all know what they had. But I think the Bear probably knew too. I think he had, seen them in the past and watching he wasn't a dumb coach, right? The Bear. I think he knew what was coming. Just to jump on some more questions, we talked about it before the show, but I want to ask you, the guys did want to know, what's the deal with Mobile? Why were we playing teams in Mobile instead of Hattiesburg or at NC State or even Florida State? It seems like Mobile was a spot we kept playing at.
Well, we did play Florida State home and home back in 56. We played them down there and we lost 19-18. We missed all 3 extra points. So we played them. We had played them at their place on 56. So they played us 57. And the reason they chose in 57 season, we only had seating for 10,000 people. It was all bleacher seats. In 58, at the beginning of the year, they put in 2,000 additional seats, and they were chairback, and the price had been $2 a ticket per game in 57, and went up to only in the reserve seating, 2,000 seats went up to $3, and $2 remained the other. So the ticket price in Mobile, they were able to raise considerably, and they would allow more people to go. I don't remember. I know that in the 58 season when we played them there, I think they was in the 25,000 somewhere in that level. In the 58 57 when we played Florida State there, it was 20 plus, approaching the 25. So
there you have it. Definitely attendance. I had some guys, even myself, I said, man, maybe it was the field conditions, they're late in the season. He said, no, that's not the case. It was attendance, and they could actually charge more. Is that right?
Right,
They
that's
could
right,
charge
yeah.
more there in Mobile. More money for the team, man. Another one. Where's it at? Man.
You know, going back to Teeny Coates, who was a third string quarterback that I mentioned in the Memphis game. He played more in the Virginia Tech game, that was the 41 nothing. He played more in that game than either the first string quarterback or the second string quarterback. And the first team, I remember in the second half, we probably played a couple of minutes during the third quarter and a couple of minutes during the fourth quarter. In fact, I'm not even sure we got in the fourth quarter. They had come in they had the leading ground gainer of the nation, and we held him to 6 yards.
Wow.
So that's, you know.
Now the one I was just looking for, and I hate I got stumped here, but the goal line stand. We're at Chattanooga, or at their place. We're late in the fourth quarter. They got you the 1-2 yard line. Kind of run us through the stand, the goal line stand.
Okay.
From your perspective.
Yeah. Well, first of all, Chattanooga had beat Tennessee that year 14-7. They were number 6 in the nation on the college division. They had a prospective quarterback who was NFL and actually was drafted and went and played in the NFL for a few years. So we had the ball. It just it stopped them, and they had punted to us. And on first down, we fumbled the ball. And when I say we looked at this a number of times. You can look at the film, and you can't tell if George Sekou pulled his hands out too quick, or I hit the snap to him. You can't tell. All you can tell is me moving the ball back to it, and the next thing you know, the ball's on the ground. So we fumble at the 2 yard line. So the defense we used for a goal line was called gap 8. That would mean where all 8 men on the line lined up in the gaps. In other words, so you had a person between the center and the guard on each side, between the guard and tackle on each side, between the tackle and the end on each side. And then you had 3 backs, 1 in the middle and 1 on each side. So the first down, the quarterback got the ball and he held it, and they made a yard. So it was second down and 1 yard to go in. On that, he fumbled the snap, and we got it. He got it back, fell on it on the 2 yard line, back the way he started.
So now we're on third down.
Third down. What happened was they ran a halfback on one side of the field. Actually, it was on opposite from my side, but the guard, the center, busted my. Back then, there was no such thing as face mask, but there was a 1 bar deal that went across you to protect somewhat your face, and he did a 4-on on me and shattered that bar, and I had to get a different helmet. I had to, referee called timeout, went over the sideline, I got it, went back in, and then the next play is when they came our way and on our side, halfback, and we stopped them. So we wound up taking over on the 2 where they started with and where we held them for. We took the ball. Then it was pretty close to the end of the game at that time, and like I said, if they had scored, the worst they could have done if they made the extra point was been a tie 20-20, and then we'd have had to take the ball and go down and score some way, either field goal or a touchdown. But fortunately, all we had to do was go down the field, and I forget, we moved it down and wound up
running that clock.
Running the clock out.
Now, that was a question they want to know. I want to know, immediately following that game, we talked a little bit about it. Tell me about the train, man. Tell me about the field goal. Tell us the deal here.
They had that year because it was, first of all, it was the Saturday after Thanksgiving, and of course that was it, the final game right there. Well, they scheduled a train, and I forget how many cars they had, but they had at least 4, maybe more, I don't know, filled up. They started out in New Orleans, and they stopped. They stopped someplace before they got in Hattiesburg and took passengers on. They stopped in Hattiesburg, and then they stopped up someplace else in North Alabama, going into Tennessee, on the thing, I believe. But anyway, after the game was over, as soon as it finished, ever how many people we had there, they ran on the field, and they took up and pulled up the goalposts out of the ground, and because they showed it in the film with them going out of the ground and carrying the goalposts towards the middle of the field. And so it was a very exciting and very honest thing.
It makes me wonder if that was, and maybe you can help me here, maybe that was the first time Southern Miss fans tore a goalpost down. I don't know.
I don't know that, I don't ever remember that.
That's pretty cool, man. I love that, and I had never heard that part of the championship game either. So I definitely wanted to get that in here. Rick, go ahead.
No, what happened, what I was going to tell you, on the thing, what happened, then we go back to Southern, and that Monday we had a team meeting, and we were formally invited to go back to the Tangerine Bowl, where we had been the previous 2 years. We unfortunately got beat both times. The 56 team got beat by 1 touchdown. The 57 team got beat by 1 point, 10-9, I think was the score of the game. And the guy at the end of the game, the guy with East Texas State, that's who it was, kicked a field goal that, had the wind not been blowing 30 miles an hour, it would have missed the goalpost by about 20 yards. But the wind was blowing the way that it needed to be for that field goal to come, for the ball to come towards the middle of the field, and it went through, and they got the 3 points and beat us 10-9. So when we got the invite, we had a team meeting, and the first thing we did in the team meeting was deciding to elect a captain. So there was a vote, and Jimmy Taylor, who was also from Biloxi, who also started playing with me when we were in the 7th grade, and had played every year through that. And the 5 years he had redshirted at Southern, and so he was on the 5 years at Southern also. So we together we had played that many years, from the 7th grade all the way through the 12th in high school, and through all 5 years, because he had redshirted also at Southern. Well, the votes came out, and it was a tie between he and I. So before we could say anything about, well, just make both of us co-captains, they had already distributed paper again to vote again, and so it was a second vote, and I was elected captain, and Jim was elected co-captain, and all of that. So Jim just passed away this past year, and he was very much on the thing. Then after we got that squared away, that's when they told us, y'all need to vote on, do we want to go to the Tangerine Bowl. Well, even though the Tangerine Bowl was a fairly big bowl, it wasn't near as big as most all the others. Plus, they were coming up with 2 new bowls that year, the Blue Bonnet Bowl and the Liberty Bowl. And that's the Liberty Bowl originally was started in Pennsylvania, on the thing. So we said we ought to be able to get in one of these bowls, on the thing. So let's turn it down. So we voted. And by the way, I was touting and asking everybody to vote it down, and Jimmy was asking everybody to vote for it. Okay, so I don't know how they never told us how the vote turned out. They just said we voted against going to the Tangerine Bowl. Well, as it turned out, turned out to be a mistake because we didn't get invited to any other bowl.
Man.
We came really close, but the Blue Bonnet Bowl and the Liberty Bowl both had teams that had black athletes, and because of Mississippi's segregation rule, we couldn't accept. Even if we got an invite, we couldn't have accepted it. Okay.
Right.
Now, towards the end of the year, it looked like we were being considered really strong for the Gator Bowl, which would have been great, And Ole Miss was being considered for the Sugar Bowl to play a match with LSU, okay, on the thing. And LSU, it was the national champion in the university division that year. They were undefeated also. We and they were the only two undefeated teams in the nation that year. So it looked good that Ole Miss was going to go there. Well, they played Mississippi State in the last game of the year. What do they call it? The Iron Bowl?
The Egg Bowl.
Egg Bowl. Okay. And Mississippi State had a guy. Ole Miss was the favorite, but Mississippi State had a quarterback named Jackie Parker, who was a really good athlete. And they wound up tying Ole Miss that year.
Wow.
And when they tied Ole Miss, the Sugar Bowl pulled their deal from them, and the Gator Bowl dropped us and went to Ole Miss. So they went. So we.
Come on, that's how that worked. Huh?
And they just to give you one example, LSU played Clemson, and they beat Clemson 6-0. And North Carolina State had only lost to Clemson 21 to 14 or one touchdown on the thing. So,
there you go.
So we felt like, and there was some write-up in papers touting us playing LSU, two undefeated teams. But Paul Diesel came out publicly and said, I don't know who we're going to play, but I know who we're not going to play. and that was in the paper. It said, we're not going to play Mississippi Southern College.
I like it. I mean, I'm sure y'all didn't, but I like how they knew. They knew. Real quick, man, I'm going to get you off here, but did you ever see or play in the games with any drop kicks, or did you ever do any center sneaks?
Yeah, let me say this here. George Secool and I the way we worked, in other words, when I got to be first string in 57 and George got to be first string in 57, we were always in the game at the same time. In other words, it was never, I don't ever remember another quarterback coming in I was snapping to, and he didn't remember coming in and take another center. Right. Okay. All right. So we had a deal where if he came up and he saw that the two defensive guards were split a little bit too far, he would pinch me, and just as he started to call signals, I would snap in the ball and we would move on.
That's good, man.
And we did that a number of times. And the reason when we first did it, we were both kind of skeptical what Coach Mann was going to say, because he was a real strict, straight shot guy. In other words, he believed in playing football the way football ought to be played, and no hot stuff or anything like that. But we always managed to make probably a 5 yard. I guess if the total number of times that we did it over the years, over those 2 years, we probably had at least a 5 yard average, which was pretty darn good.
That's very
good. And like I said, whichever guard was the widest, in other words, let's say both of the guards created a gap where they got on the outside shoulder of our guard, that's a pretty wide gap there for the quarterback and me. And I would pick the one that was the furthest away, and that's where he would go, because I would take that guy, move him, and he'd have plenty of room, and then he would get, one of the linebackers would have to tackle him on the thing, and that's how we did it. And we unfortunately we both played in the Senior Bowl, but we didn't get to play together. In other words, we didn't get the offensive on the thing.
That would have been awesome.
Yeah,
that would have been. It was still cool. Y'all both playing in the same Senior Bowl.
Yeah.
What about the drop kicks, man? No drop kicks.
No drop kicks.
Nothing flashy.
Nothing flashy. We the extra point, like I said, Hugh McInnes was a first string in, and later on stayed in the pros about 4 or 5 years. And he was also a place kicker. He's the one that kicked the field goal against Memphis. So he got the opportunity a few times to do that, but definitely no drop kicks. There wasn't anything like that.
Coach Van wouldn't have that flashy stuff, huh?
No, he was. He believed in when we started every year on the 2-a-day practices. That's the first thing he would let everybody know. Usually about the second or third day, people would be asking, how many days we're going to do this, And usually they didn't ask him, they asked the assistant coach, and they went to, if they went to it, they did, but he would usually, he would have learned that somebody would ask him that. So at the next time we were all together in a team meeting, he would say, some people want to know how much longer we're going to do 2-a-day practices, and we're going to do it long enough that everybody on the team is going to be able to practice tackling and practice blocking. And when I'm satisfied that everybody knows how to block and everybody knows how to tackle, that's how you win football games, and that's how that's when we go back to regular practices.
There's a lot of that still true today.
Yeah.
If you got everybody on one of our biggest weaknesses right now, Southern Miss fans, is that offensive line, guys. If we had everybody that kind of the Coach Van way, if everybody could tackle and everybody could block, we'd have a lot more wins on that schedule. That's my opinion.
Yeah, you're right.
I want to ask you one thing. Just me being a fan of Southern Miss and talking to a former player, if you were to tell this team today, now we're having not the best season. The past couple years have been pretty bad for us. We got a bowl game and we beat Rice, but overall it's been tough. It's been real tough to be a Southern Miss fan. I'm sure it's tough to be there and be in the practices sometimes and being losing. But if you had opportunity to tell them players anything, it could be, anything. Tell the fans, tell the players, tell the coaches. If you had that opportunity, being from a national championship team at that school, what could you tell them?
Well, obviously it's difficult. The thing that worried me the most is right off the bat after we lost a couple of those games, and then when we lost to South Alabama, it's hard to keep the team, for the coach to keep the team. I know it's for the team not to give up or whatever on the thing. I don't think, even though they played bad, they've improved. I think some of the changes that he made, coach made, getting out of the offensive play calling. I don't know about, still the defense is weaker than I don't know what you would say to them other than hey, keep it up, keep up the faith, don't give up, continue to play as hard as you can, every play as hard as you can, and I don't think they've done that. So that if they started doing that, I think that would help, and probably they with a few more breaks, I guess, on the thing, they could have maybe won 1 or 2 other games that they lost. So what worries me is how many fans are going to give up on them, and we already, even though we had a record sell out of season tickets this year, and be, pretty much a record of attendance. It turned sour real quick, and all it's going to take really is to win. That's it. So whatever they can do to do that is what they need to do, and hopefully the fans who are quote really true blood fans will let that as long as they make progress, and as long as they show signs of not giving up and playing the best that they can, I think they can win and get more respect.
Yeah. Guys, listen, we always hear it from me, just a fanboy, man. That's all I am. I love my Golden Eagles since I was this big tall, man. I lived in Long Beach, going up there with my dad. It was some of the cheapest tickets we could get at the time, and my dad would buy season tickets, man. So being a fan back in the good days, all the way through now, you got to stay with it, okay? Y'all hear it from me all the time. Us going to the games, us trying to do as much as we can for the team. But I'm just a fan. You're hearing from former players here doing the same thing. Don't give up on the team. If you're a player, keep putting that effort in. It's going to pay off. It will, but don't give up on Coach. He's making changes. The offensive is looking a whole lot better. Defense, I won't talk about defense right now. We sitting with a guy that only gave up 22 points or 55 points the whole season. 55 points is what South Alabama put on Southern Miss in Mobile. Let's not forget that was one game. This is a whole season, 55 points. So I'm scared to talk about defense with you, brother. I ain't gonna lie, because our defense now, it is struggling. We miss Austin Armstrong, our old defensive coordinator that went to Florida. We said, we're gonna do the same thing he did. We're not. And play calling. It kind of was a little past due. We all knew that. But he did. He lowered the ego or whatever y'all want to call it, and he did it. He gave the play calling up, and our team has a spark now. They've been trying different quarterbacks. They've got Ethan Crawford. We still don't know if he's going to play against Mississippi State yet, or if they will play Billy Wiles. Either way, this is one of the better years that we can knock off Mississippi State. They just got rid of their coach. Right. They got rid of their defensive coordinator. Plus, Will Rogers, the quarterback, is out too. So I know we're not where we should be as Southern Miss, right? But Mississippi State dang sure ain't where they need to be. Right. So if we ever gonna get them, this might be our year to get them. What you think, man?
We getting them at a good
time. And we're not the best, right? But we definitely getting them at a good time. So thank you, Mr. Richard, for coming on my show, man.
I've enjoyed it very much.
This is an honor, man. It really is.
I always enjoyed reminiscing and bringing back memories of how precious it was. And even though it's 65 years ago, I can remember stuff like it was yesterday. Me sitting here reliving it with you, man, it's good. It's fun. I've had a blast. All this, it's a lot at once for someone that, I had to do research. I've been doing it, but to get the man here and hear him tell it, way better. I want to see some Southern Miss football with you, man. Okay.
We gotta plan a game. Y'all be good. I love you, but Jesus loves you more, man. Yeah. Southern Miss to the dog on top. Let's get after it.
Top, yes.
To the dog on top. Love you. Southern Miss.